as we begin once again this wonderful process of accompanying each other in and on our journey into the very special prime of life, our elderhood. We are committed and committing ourselves to conscious maturing, not just for our own sakes, but for the sake of the whole, for the sake of the whole commune, of the human community and of the living community, for which our eldering will be a great service and healing. So thank you all for being here again. This is our third round of deepening, and I will turn our evening over to Danny, who will facilitate our process tonight. And I thank him in advance. And I thank all of you in advance on behalf of the Degnan Institute for Earth and Spirit.
Thank you, dear Kathleen. And greetings, everyone, and Happy New Year, even if a little bit late in the process. I'm seeing some messages about people feeling they're muted. I've unmuted everyone. If you need to say something, there is down in the bottom left-hand corner, the little icon, mute. That's your microphone. And you can mute yourself if you like, while I'm reflecting or whatever. But anyway, welcome, everybody. I'm happy to be with you as we explore eldering in grace. And so let me summarize what we've done so far and where we are now. In Eldering 1, you may remember we saw that eldering is not the same as aging, though they're clearly related. Eldering, however, unlike aging, involves a choice and a commitment to learn from experience and to pass on this learning, ideally. In Eldering 2, we explored a meaning framework of a story of origins that suggests a purpose for us humans as the self-awareness of the universe. In this Eldering 3, we want to personalize this purpose. For there have been moments in all our lives when we found ourselves thinking or even saying, this is why I'm here. This is what I was made for. However, we've also learned that if we don't build on and cultivate them, these moments tend to fade, so that too often we find ourselves thinking and feeling that this is not what I'm here for. Our individual life journey, in other words, is about discovering who I am at my truest self and then trying to live accordingly. This implies a lot of things, obviously, including learning to listen more deeply to life and practicing what we hear, learning from my mistakes as well as my successes, and the support of good relationships. And we'll touch on each of these, I think, as we go through our own exploration. Before we continue, though, let me say a word about our approach in this program. First of all, this eldering theme is both ancient and new. For while elders once held an important place in society as a kind of archive of experience, this is no longer the case for a number of reasons. One is that we don't need such archives anymore since we have technology that can do this much better. Another is that in a world where productivity is the ultimate value in the human project, the older sector is seen as less productive, so less valuable. So eldering is something we need to reinvent. And how best to do this? The simplest approach is to ask one another, engage all of us in something that is clearly the concern of all of us. So in a sense, we are crowdsourcing what eldering in grace might mean. This then is not a program where we simply listen and receive new knowledge as if I had it. I don't. But a process in which we all generate new knowledge together. In concrete terms, there will be a number of ways for us to do this that include sharing in the breakout rooms of these gatherings, but other things too. For example, we'll be asking you to share your feelings and thoughts immediately after we finish. And it is not simply feedback that we're asking for. Rather, it is your input into our emerging new shared understanding. We've also created a YouTube channel where we'll keep recordings of our sessions to help us continue our exploration and discovery process together. And Carlos is taking a hand in that in a particular way. And we'll try to build even a library of resources. We all have so many resources to offer here. I realize that some of us have experienced reservations about participating in the breakout rooms, and I certainly understand. But I would suggest that in this project, every voice is important. As the poet William Stafford puts it, as elephants parade, but if one wanders, the circus won't find the park. So, of course, you can opt out of this part, but you will be missed. I would add that I have also heard from many of you that the breakout rooms have been a surprising gift. But now let me turn to today's theme, which I'm calling The Stranger Who Was Yourself. The phrase is from a poem by the Caribbean poet Derek Walcott that suggests that eldering in grace is often about rediscovering our true self that we once knew well, perhaps, but have possibly forgotten or lost along the way. Last time we noted that everything has a purpose within a story of origins, galaxies and stars, our planet Earth and the entire Earth community. Everything participates, each in its own unique way, in the emergence of life. In us human beings, life emerges as self-reflective consciousness. The universe, in other words, becomes itself in a unique way in the self-reflective awareness of human beings. But what does this mean for me personally? What is my particular purpose in this unfolding mystery? What is it that I have to contribute? Once again, I point us to the intuitions of my friend Rilke, who puts it like this. God speaks to each of us as he makes us, and walks with us gently out of the night. These are the words we dimly hear. You sent out beyond your recall. Go to the limits of your longing. Embody me, flare up like a flame and make big shadows I can move in. Let everything happen to you. Beauty and terror, just keep going. No feeling is final. Don't let yourself lose me. Nearby is the country they call life. You will know it by its seriousness. Give me your hand. Let's see if I can find this poem. I thought I'd cleared away all this stuff, but obviously not. Gosh. There we are, getting closer. Bear with me. Here we go. There's the little piece. So let me just use it to reflect a little bit. For Rilke, God, what he calls God, is the spirit of creativity, which he believes is most highly articulated in the linguistic creations of the poet. But for Rilke, that means all of us. We are all children of the universe, born out of the darkness, which is another favorite image of Rilke. We are all poets who give form to the spirit of creativity. We are all children of God who speaks to each of us as he makes us, then walks with us silently out of the night. One idea implied here, that we have come from a place of perfection and will return there when we die, is not new. In the famous lines of William Wordsworth, but trailing clouds of glory we come from God who is our home. Heaven lies about us in our infancy. Shades of the prison house begin to close upon the growing boy. You may remember that from your school days. The implication is that we know who we are and where we have come from, but forget as shades of the prison house close upon the growing boy or girl, obviously. Without going down the theological paths implied here, like past lives, I think we have all had such thoughts and even experiences, like the little boy caught on the nanny camera in the bedroom speaking to his recently born brother in the creche. I'm beginning to forget things about where we've come from, he is heard saying. So I need you to remember for me. Whatever the case, Rilke continues with the mandate that life bestows on each of us. Go to the limits of your longing. Embody me. This is our individual purpose, he says, to embody life, the universe, God, by going to the limits of our longing. In other words, our unique path is already planted in us like a seed planted in the earth. So that all we have to do is to follow this longing, our deepest heart's desire, our true and authentic self. However, there is a more nuanced aspect of this impulse in Rilke would suggest that we are not programmed the way other creatures are that simply live from their instincts. Rilke describes a more adventurous, even experimental aspect of our process. Let everything happen to you. Beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final. There is only one condition, or perhaps warning. Don't let yourself lose me. Don't lose touch with who you are and why you're here, and that I am with you. That should be enough, surely, but not for Rilke. Instead, he goes on to describe the challenges of living like this in a world that has essentially forgotten how to. He writes, nearby is the country they call life. You will know it by its seriousness. Give me your hand. The word seriousness contrasts with how the mystics of all the traditions have described life, like a cosmic dance, a celestial symphony, a mysterium tremendum et fascinans. In other words, overwhelming and yet irresistible. As playing in the fields of the Lord, all we have to do is hold on to what we know in our deep heart's core. Give me your hand, Rilke's God tells us. Now, doesn't this suggest a way to begin to understand the unique personal contribution to life that each of us can make? So let's begin our interaction this evening by connecting, which you're beginning to see is the first stage of our mindfulness dialogue process. Connecting, exploring, and discovering. By connecting to ourselves and to one another at a deeper place than usual, we will create the space or container in which we can generate new understanding together. So we'll begin this connecting through a short mindfulness exercise. I leave the poem on the screen too, because some of the words I sort of imply as I lead the exercise. So position yourself comfortably, relaxed but alert. Your back straight, your hands in your lap, your eyes closed or softened. And then bring your attention to your breath. Be aware of life filling your body as you breathe in. And as you breathe out, feel the joy of being alive. Breathing in, life. Breathing out, joy. Now in your mind, softly say the words, go to the limits of your longing. And repeat the phrase a few times. Go to the limits of your longing. And I call to mind a time, a moment, an experience when you found yourself saying, wouldn't it be great if it were like this all the time? Or this is what I was made for. recall as many details as you can. The circumstances, maybe the people. Feel again the feelings you had. As you breathe in this self, this longing, this deep heart's core. As you breathe out, feel the rightness of this self and the joy it brings. Breathe in your true self. Breathe out joy. Now, when you're ready, return to where we are. And if your eyes were closed, open your eyes. As you do so, notice how you feel, just even after that short period. A little more present, a little more calm, maybe a little connection to the people who are here with us together. Now let's deepen and expand this connection by sharing with each other. Carlos is going to break us into pairs, nothing more intimate perhaps. And it gives you the chance to share what this has begun to stir in you. There's no right or wrong. Go to the limits of your longing. Perhaps a personal story might surface for you. Perhaps a desire to access this self again at this stage of eldering. Try to make this as personal as you can, rather than an intellectual exercise. It's not meant to be an analysis of a poem or anything else for that matter. This is who we are. And this is where we are right now. And this is an exciting exploration to take seriously and turn deliberately towards something that perhaps
Well, that worked.
seemed to. Did everybody go already? That was so quick.
Yeah, it requires that I do this manually beforehand. It's not done randomly. I think that takes extra computing power, which
And so how are you feeling?
good. I'm going to the limits of my longing.
Oh, good. So what are the limits of your longing? I mean, let's just for a moment to see if there is a story in there.
I mean, I'm going to that Salzburg seminar. I'm going to that Winston conference. That is the limits of my longing. What? Why not? That's just, it's a big risk. It's low probability that we could have that kind of gift. But if we don't try it, it'll never happen. I can imagine people, a few people like get it right away and they want to support it and it becomes a thing. It becomes like a cause celeb kind of thing. So I want to push this. What is that poem? I'm trying to think. It's not a poem. It's the Marianne Williamson quote. God does not want you to be small.
I got somebody calling in there. I'm just trying to get rid of them. Keep my phone muted. In fact, I'll turn it off.
So I don't exactly know the quote, but you know what I'm talking about.
Say that again.
God does not want you to play small. There's nothing. I forgot what Marianne Williamson poem that.
It was Marianne Williamson, and it was used by Nelson Mandela.
Right. Yeah.
It's not our smallness we need to be afraid of, it's our bigness. That's what kind of scares us.
Right.
And
So that's kind of where I go. It's like, I got nothing to lose. We got nothing to lose. If we put out the call and we grab the imagination, maybe we can make it happen. limits of my longing. How about you?
Well, it's certainly shaped by this stage of my life. I find myself waking up in the morning and many times during the day, realizing with more clarity, if not now, when? I'm happy to go to sleep when the time comes, but I don't want to have wasted it. Like Mary Oliver, she says, when my time comes, when death comes, I want to look back and say, I was a bride married to amazement.
Ooh, nice.
I want to do that too. I want to be able to say, I've stopped trying to prove things. I've got this, maybe it's one shot, maybe it's thousands of shots. I don't know. I was sort of leaving the door open, even with the notion of, trailing clouds of glory, we come from heaven, which is our home. You could even put that into the Christian context and say, we all pre-existed in the heart of God. I mean, Christians will say that. They will not say anything about past lives because it's too difficult for them to fit it in to their theology. But Celtic Christians in the past did think about multiple lives. I don't necessarily think that's it, like it's as literal as that, but anyway, it's just that I'm here now thinking, with the death, and I'm going to say that in this next piece when we explore it, that death is the great awakener.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate cosmic nudge.
Yeah, right.
And I'm going to play with a little thing too after that.
Two places that I will with you, what you said, Danny. One is, there is something about eldering that's interesting. It's kind of like a unique time in your life where you got nothing to lose. You got
Yeah.
nothing. If you're young, you don't want to make a mistake. It's going to ruin the rest of your life, blah, blah, blah. But when you're an elder, you're kind of at that place where you really have the privilege of the floor. It's like, okay, my time. I'm not proving anything anymore. Just I've done everything I've wanted to, or satisfied enough. So it gives you that gift.
Yeah.
And the other thing that it reminds me of is the Buddhist notion. When I was learning about that they call them. I think it's called kata. There's another name like it, something like a kata. But it was a martial arts practice where you like go through like 15 minutes of motion, and it's part of the kendo practice where you're basically practicing doing something with a sword. But this motion that happens for about 15 minutes is very, very prescribed and very precise. It all builds to the last strike. And the whole idea that you give it all you've got, everything, you amass all of your chi and your energy, and you take it towards the end, which is the strike. So something about eldering, kind of brings you close to that moment where you have to strike.
Yeah.
And the whole life is getting ready for it.
Let's see when folks are back. Still coming back, huh? I think most of us are back now. How was that?
I hate those suddenly we're shut down.
Isn't it?
So, we're watching the seconds go by and you're trying to finish the thought.
Doesn't it show you how precious it is to connect with someone?
Yes, it is. Beautiful, beautiful.
Truly is. Well, sorry, Dennis, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm trying to mute.
No problem. So here's what we're going to do now. For those of you perhaps who haven't been part of this before, it would be impossible, obviously, to hear from every pair. Every breakout room would be here until tomorrow. But the notion of a representative voice, a collective voice, And it's in many traditions, certainly in the Native American tradition, that a random group can represent the 7 generations, the past generations, the future, and the present. So listen deeply to your own deep heart's core. And if you can,
Danny, we can't hear you. Danny, we can't hear you.
so whoever feels moved, please just raise your hand if you can, either physically or with the little icon, and I'll see if I can call you. I can't see it. There are 2 screens, so it's difficult. Mickey, are you ready?
I'm absolutely ready, but I got to speak another time. So is it okay for me to speak again this time?
I think you feel moved, and I must be moved to call you, so go for it.
Well, I didn't get to say goodbye to Elizabeth. We were so enchanted with talking with each other that it just all of a sudden we were gone. But it was a wonderful experience. And it felt like one of those things where we've known each other our whole lives. We just hadn't met yet.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen a lot, but every now and then it does happen. And it's quite precious. And what I came up with during listening to her and then to myself is realizing that my longing is to know and to be known. And that is happening more and more for me as I'm eldering. My fantasy is that I'm the oldest person here because I'm 93, and most of the people here look like they're not quite that old. So, but that has happened to me in my last decade, so that I'm feeling more and more known and knowing others, and it makes my heart sing.
Wow, there's a good note, so to speak, to hold. It makes my heart sing.
Yeah.
Feel more known.
Yeah.
To know, maybe
Exactly.
know. So thank you, Mickey.
Thank you. Thanks, Danny.
Out of the collective. Let me invite someone else who feels moved. Linda has her hand up. If you'd like to show your video, we're lovely to see you, Linda.
Danny, as I was sharing in my small group, and this is really directed towards you, but I hope it's a wider service. What I'm 75, and what fills me fills me with an embodied sense of fire. That's my language, but it's also the language of Terre de Chardin, is that as I listen to you and know that an increasing, I have an increasing energy to be engaged and involved in the unfolding, the evolution of the spirituality of Terre de Chardin, a God in evolution, a love in evolution. And I just was really struck that as I listened to you speak and read Rilke and just your words, your energy, you never once quoted Teilhard. And yet there was this energy of love and this forward pull in my spirit that I was surprised by and deeply served by. So thank you.
That's a wonderful framing too. Thank you so much, Linda. So do we have another voice? And think of yourself. Okay, Mary Ellen.
Hi, Danny.
Hey, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks. I'm 68, and I'm from
a youngster, huh?
yeah, a young elder, younger elder. So I just had a wonderful experience. I echo Muriel's sense about the conversation, and it was striking to me that Mary and I both we shared experiences of joy. Sorry for the dogs. Whoops. We shared experiences of joy in the midst of intense grief, and they were actually somewhat similar. So, and we also talked about death and the value of presence, because really that's it, when someone's grieving or in pain, usually there's not much we can give them, but if we give them our presence, that's at least, well, it's certainly the best we can give. So, and we hope that God makes it sufficient. So thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. Thank you all.
Thank you very much for highlighting that joy that you experienced even in grief, because it's something that is very clear to us as we get older. The two are perhaps two sides of the one thing. One more voice. Do I see Linda? Is it Linda? Yes. Go for it.
Another Linda.
Another Linda.
So Jean and I had exactly the experience that Muriel described, or at least I had that experience with Jean of feeling like I'd met someone I'd always known but hadn't met yet. And we both gave each other images from our life of moments when we would have wished this could go on forever, or wish the world could be like this. Hers from working with Salvadorans and trying to educate people on the East Coast, New York, about what was going on in El Salvador at the time. And I was reflecting, and when you invited us at first to reflect on such a moment, I didn't capture one. And hers reminded me of when I was 14 years old, 13, 14, and all the AFS students from small rural towns in Eastern Oregon came to the little bit bigger rural town that I lived in. And here we were, of all colors, all many cultures, religions, spiritual paths. And even at 14, I had the experience, the awareness that this is the world I wanted to live in, where everyone came together to learn from one another, to love one another, to move forward together. And I feel that way also in this group, Danny and Kathleen, and I thank you so much for organizing it, because every time I have met, and I'm one of those that's reluctant sometimes to go into the breakout rooms, but every time I have been here and met a new person, I have this experience of, wow, there are other people who are holding this value system and we are moving forward toward it. So thank you very much.
Oh, what a wonderful sort of little segue too, to step into an exploration of this self that we're talking about, that true self that is at the root of our longing. You said something that struck me, and maybe we can sort of use it as a way of slipping into this next stage of exploring. The person you were speaking with, it was like someone you'd always known. I find that intriguing, that when we share at a place of truth or honesty or self or vulnerability, it is like you meet yourself in the other person too. Certainly the self is not confined to this individual that I think I am. There's so much more going on. So let's explore the self. But just before we do so, let's take a moment to notice how we feel, even after this short period, where we are, the sacred place that we have created, even in this, with this technology. It seems almost impossible some years ago that we could even think of doing this. And yet here we are. We've created a container where we maybe can now explore with a little bit more deliberateness, even honesty, and hopefully with some skill of listening carefully to one another. So let's see if we can explore this self. At the beginning of our conversation, I mentioned the phrase, the title, in fact, for today, the theme, the stranger who was yourself. I think we can all resonate with these words, right? For there have been times when we've felt clear about who we are. But as I noted, unfortunately, the many challenges of life have often caused us to forget. We do, in fact, know who we are. But like a talent that we don't practice, it can fade. So here we want to explore what this self is, certainly, but perhaps more importantly, we want to learn how to recover it. And Derek Walcott, the phrase, the stranger who was yourself, comes from his poem, lays out a plan, as it were, in a poem called Love After Love. Again, I'll share it and then I'll put it on the screen for you to see, but sometimes good just to listen to a piece, to a poem. It's another kind of experience. The poem, as I said, is called Love After Love. The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door. You will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, sit here, eat. You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back to your heart to itself. Give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit, feast on your life. Isn't that wonderful? Sit, feast on your life.
Yeah.
So let me use this as a little kind of what we call in mindfulness dialogue in this stage of exploring. Now we've created a container by connecting. We want to explore. This is a kind of a catalyst. It's not meant to be analyzed as such. It's just, there's a word or a phrase. I will reflect a little bit, but then leave it to you just to use the way we did with the previous one. Sit, feast on your life. It's all there. He seems to be saying, waiting for you. But it will take something to give you a push. What I have called elsewhere a cosmic nudge. A cosmic nudge. You know exactly what I'm talking about. This nudge can be a loss, a failure often, a collapse that brings you to your senses, usually by bringing you to your knees. It is then, through the crack, as the singer Leonard Cohen sings, the crack that lets the light in. That's in the light that we experience the delight, the elation, as Walcott calls it, of seeing this wonderful self who's been like a stranger to you for so long. However, this is no stranger, he says. This is your real and only self, in fact, the one who has loved you all your life. Don't you love that? The one who has loved you all your life. Even if you have ignored her for another illusory self, a self that was given to you by others, by your parents, by society, by your teachers, by your own impulses, your own needs, your own body. This is yourself who knows you by heart. As I said, it usually takes a special moment to awaken us in this way, to open our eyes to the illusions we've sometimes been living, and awaken us to the truth of who we are. I'm reminded of the tradition in both the Catholic and Jewish traditions, and perhaps others, of covering the mirrors in a house where someone dies. You maybe are familiar with that tradition. Strange tradition, I used to think. What could it mean? But in the light of this rediscovering the stranger who was yourself through a cosmic nudge, it all makes sense. Death is the most obvious cosmic nudge, for it breaks open all worlds and melts away all illusions, if we let it in. For if death is allowed in, it can be the great awakener. In older cultures like my own Ireland, when death visited a family, the neighbors stepped in to make space for the meeting by taking on the everyday chores of the family that might otherwise serve as a distraction. Instead, the family was enabled to sit with death so that it could do its work of awakening to new life. It's a different way of looking at death, I suppose. Awakening to new life, to the self that has been forgotten and lost among the cares of life. And this is the symbolic meaning of the covered mirrors. During the mourning period, old identities are covered over, while death does its work of dismantling old illusions and allowing the truth of things to resurface. In fact, at times like these, we hear ourselves saying words like, "Now I know what's important," or "from now on." The result is that when we remove the covers from the mirrors, we find this new, or rather ancient and true self looking back at you. "Ah, there you are," you say. "There you are." And like the poet, you want to sit down and celebrate this resurrection. Welcome this stranger who was yourself. But now comes the challenging bit. We've probably all had this experience or something like it. And we've all said words like "from now on," and "after this is over," or "if I get out of this." And we were sincere. You really do want to give your heart back to itself. You do. But like New Year resolutions, the enthusiasm fades quickly and the old habits kick in, which is why Walcott, thankfully, finishes with some suggestions for reinforcing this cosmic nudge and its awakening. He says, take down the love letters from the bookshelf. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf. The photographs. Did you go through photographs this time of the year? The photographs. The desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit. Feast on your life. Certainly in the context of eldering, he's suggesting things we might be inclined to do at this stage of our lives anyway. For it's in the love letters, the photographs, and particularly, I think, the desperate notes, that we will probably find shades of, pieces even, of this self. So, there's the poem. The time will come when with elation you will greet yourself arriving at your own door. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf. The old photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit. Feast on your life. Now, that's not a bad thing to be doing at eldering. It's not a morose thing. I think it's wonderful. So let's turn back to each other again. This is, for me, the heart of these gatherings. It's the small groups, and then what emerges out of them never ceases to enthrall me. And I think I'm not speaking for myself here.
Danny, could I raise? I was put in room 4 and no one else was there. I was wondering if I could stick around and not go there, and if anybody else was in that same situation, stick around on this screen and put us together maybe.
Good thinking, Joe. I think what happened is Kathleen unfortunately had to step away. She's feeling unwell.
Oh, okay.
Send a little prayer to Kathleen, but it might have been that. So when someone doesn't go, you might find yourself, that's what I said about you will be missed. I meant it literally. So Carlos, could you break us into the rooms? We're going to take 10 minutes and explore what all this stirs in you about your deepest, truest self. Like, where is it now? And what do you want to do about it? Because that brings it into the concrete aspects of this eldering process. Where is it now? And what do you want to do about it? So Carlos is going to do his magic, and we will see you in 10 minutes, hopefully 10 wonderful minutes. And Joe, hold on there if you like, and we'll hold you, and Carlos has you, and away we go. That's great. People are getting onto it themselves, Carlos, and I think they're kind of taking ownership of this process. That's what it feels like a little bit there. Did you?
Yeah, they like the breakout rooms.
They clearly like the breakout rooms. They're discovering something there. They're creating their own sort of encouragement. People come back from these breakout rooms glowing. Okay, that's everyone. We've got everybody back now. I can see the number. We're getting better at this technology. You can see it's a little smoother, and we'll see where we can take it. As I said, I can see the glow on people's faces when they come back from connecting with one another. So once again, a representative voice, think of it as something that we're building, not just at this moment, but throughout this gathering, but throughout the gatherings and throughout the time period, because we'll be saying to you at the end how we want you to participate in an ongoing conversation insofar as you can, because it really is that kind of a thing. So we're going to start off. Michael is going to take us away. Michael Tierney. So unmute, make sure you're unmuted.
This is Michael Tierney. I'm calling from Big Ugly Creek in West Virginia, where I've been since 1987. When I was talking with my companion, what struck me with the Walcott poem is that it really is a pivot in noticing that the feast is there, and that sometimes, and I can look back now in terms of the thread of my life and where it took, and mixing the metaphors, but where a new chapter emerged. Sometimes it's a phrase that somebody said to me that it just made me fundamentally think differently. Sometimes it's coming to a place. I first started tying in with the Catholic worker movement on East First Street when I was 18 during a spring break in college. But it just, in terms of moments that I knew this is where I should be, and there's no other place at this moment for me to be. But it's not that the feast wasn't always there. It's just something made me have a second glance, or something had me just shift my perspective and go, oh, this is the right place to be.
Yeah.
And right now, this calling towards eldering, I've spent 3 weeks with a dear mutual friend of Danny's and mine, Michael Rogers, in Glendalough, in Ireland, and had the sense to listen, that just spending time with him because of his failing health in particular, rather than running around Ireland, which I thought I was going to do when I went over there for part of a sabbatical. And then he led me to Danny and this group. But it's, again, it's just that that little bit of listening. Sometimes it's dramatic and at your knees, but sometimes it's just slowing down enough to hear that slightly different voice and turn the corner.
I think that's wonderful, Michael, and well put. It highlights, I think, too, that there's a timing perhaps in things. There is a tide in the affairs of man, which taken at the flood, etc. I think we've all seen those kairos moments. The two words in Greek for time are chronos, as you know, for chronological time, and kairos, which is the right time. And I think this is what we're seeing, and it's a question perhaps of seizing it. Thank you, Michael Rogers. I Zoomed with him just a week or so ago. He's now in the care unit in the headquarters in Ireland, and they put up a big screen so that I could Zoom with 3 or 4 or 5 of them. And it was very touching for me, men that I'd worked with many years ago in Africa, now older and ailing, but still with the life, the same passion, that the same self that brought them to that work. So who else? If you want, raise your hand physically or a little icon so that I can see it. Do I see a hand anywhere? Okay, I see Gloria Mogg raised her hand. So where are you, Gloria? And go for it. Let's hear what you say.
So we had a wonderful experience because there's only one other person on this call that I know and haven't spoken to in a very long time, and we were paired up.
Wow.
So it was like the divine hand, just saying you two need to get together. And we do similar work, and it was so uplifting for me to just hear what she was doing and share some of what I'm doing. And we only had a few minutes, but it just reminded me about, exactly, if I hold on, if I keep the divine close, if I keep in contact, it will all unfold in the way that it should. And the calling will be heard. And I don't know, a lot of things just suddenly came together. It was wonderful.
Well, that is a wonderful sort of thought too. Don't let yourself lose me, is what he said in the poem. And we know that it can mean many things, and it doesn't really matter how we interpret. We know essentially what it means. Don't let yourself lose this truth, this self, this beauty that we know instinctively.
Yes.
And when we come together like this, I love what you were saying there too, how it affirms. You find yourself, yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's where I was. And that's part of, I think, this kind of deep exploration. So another voice, another contributor to the collective. Go for it, Sue. Always lovely to hear you.
Thank you, Danny. Well, I've had so many thoughts. I always enjoy the breakout rooms, being an extrovert off the charts. So it's just wonderful. And I have had the thought about how many different selves we are, because as someone mentioned earlier about you feel like you've met another self, feeling the same things, thinking the same things. And it always happens in these breakout rooms for me to find another compatriot that is going through a lot of the same things that I now realize are part of eldering. And one thing that my suite mate or roommate mentioned was it seems like there's a new consciousness that we retired from the active lives that we led for so long, many of us for 40 years or more, mothers, forever. But for your working life, where you always had that pressure every day of getting dressed, getting out the door, being productive, and then at the end of the day evaluating everything and making your work plan for the next day. And now suddenly you're freed up from that, and you can sit with, well, who is this new self? And I think the words of this poem are so brilliant about feast on your life. At first, when I first heard that, it was like, oh, that feels a little self-indulgent. Can you really feast on your life? I've messed up so much and had so many mistakes, and have had many cosmic nudges that have brought me to my knees over and over, and they still keep happening. And I don't know about this feasting on your life, but I think once you give yourself permission to do that, and you see how you have been guided along by some incredible force, it just is very humbling. And that idea about don't let yourself lose me. And, well, what does it take to not lose that sense of being connected to something greater than yourself? And basically, it's so simple. You just have to connect to it. And why is it so difficult? Or why do we go astray? And that certainly happens to me, get depressed, give up all hope, world is over, whatever. And I think that is just, I think for all of us at this age, coming into clearer and clearer consciousness, that phrase about the new consciousness and getting clearer and clearer about an elder consciousness, or let's say a consciousness as an elder. It is very exciting. And I told one of my other roommates I was listening to a podcast this morning from NPR. Maybe you all heard the same thing. And it's about how we do not realize the power we have as individuals. Well, we elders, I think, do not claim the power that we have as individuals. And that is now my deepest longing. It's to work with other elders in claiming the power that we have collectively, to not to fix the world. I don't mean to sound Pollyannish about any of that, but to be a force for good, to be a force for the, what we're not agreeing with, that we hear every day. And we can be a force from the other direction, the other side. So I feel very, for me personally, just empowered by these connections and by knowing. And I didn't know anybody else really except Annie when I joined on this call. And by the way, West Virginia, I'm in Virginia, so we're neighbors. But it's fun to know where everyone is from. I will say that. So yeah, but I'm not from Virginia. I'm from Baltimore and spent about 30 some years in Atlanta and then Richmond. So it's been I've had a long life. I just turned 80 and it's been quite a shock. Existential shock, I will say.
Oh, I know, I know Sue for so long. And I love just that reframing of time.
Mm.
You said freed up. One of the things we're probably going to explore a little bit is time, because when you retire and you feel this time on your hands and you don't know quite what you should be doing with it, and am I lazy? Am I doing this? So that will be something to explore for ourselves. What is this new time? And find a name for it, and certainly freed up to do something, to claim a power, I think. Yeah. So another voice, just to pull this collective piece together. One more. Go ahead over here, Juanita or Anita. My eyes are bad. Unmute. You have to unmute. Can you push a little button? There you go.
Okay. Yeah. I had a very extraordinary experience that I didn't expect. I'm 80 now, and I find it harder and harder to find people that I can have a real conversation with, other than just talking about the weather or something. And can you hear me?
Yes.
And I found myself facing someone who I felt had gone deep, deep, deep and gone very far in the spiritual journey. And I was surprised, and it was somebody I had been looking for the past few years. And then all of a sudden the conversation was over. But I'm left with something very beautiful. And thank you, Mike.
Oh, thank you. Is it Juanita? I couldn't see the name properly.
Nita.
Nita. Just to highlight too, the conversation doesn't finish at the end of the breakout. Follow up with that person, perhaps. Follow up on the YouTube channel. We're going to hear more from Carlos, because the conversation, this is meant to be a kind of a starter to get us going for the month. So let me just hold that sense of the self that we've explored. We said many things. One of the things that did come up, I think it was Sue that suggested that you get the sense, perhaps when you look back, of being guided. So just for a moment, I'll think about, just hold that in our mind. And now we're going to step into what we call the discovering stage. This is kind of always fascinating for me. We've heard so many things, we've felt so many things in this interaction. We're going to breathe now for about 2 minutes together and listen for what we hear us saying. It may come up as my own thought, of course it will, but you know it. A good analogy is like jazz. You know, you put out your note, and somebody will respond, and maybe a little counterpoint, and we'll maybe build something. So just breathe for another minute, and listen for. And when you're ready, we're going to hear 4 more voices. And this time, what's beginning to emerge out of this? We've this evening, this past 3 sessions, for you, for us, what are you hearing us saying? Sometimes language like overhearing ourselves. And by the way, there's nothing right or wrong. Sometimes it might even feel foolish. In fact, often the voice of the collective is preceded or prefaced by words like, you're probably going to think this is silly, but it probably means your ego is not in the way, that you're not trying to impress, it's just coming out. So whenever any of you is ready, just again, speak up. If you need to raise your hand, we can do that just to ensure, but I kind of sense it will go naturally. So when you're ready, whoever's ready to speak, what do you hear us beginning to say? Go ahead, Jean Clark.
Yes, what I hear is that we are meeting ourselves in each other when we meet, discovering that we are one, we are each other.
Wow. Gives a whole new meaning to love your neighbor as yourself. Another voice just to build on it. Let's get our jazz going a little bit. Doesn't have to be serious. Go ahead, Jane.
Well, the theme I keep hearing about is the desire for connection and the recognition of ourselves and each other in that connection. And in my 2 little exchanges with people who are here tonight, you know, I was so disappointed not to, oh, you said that, well, tell me about it. And, you know, it had my curiosity up, because I thought, oh, I can relate to whatever you're going to say. And it's really wonderful to come together as a group with that desire and need for that, as someone said, to know and to be known, and the power of that. And when I think back, that's how I've known myself. It's really through speaking and having reflection.
Thank you, Jan. It highlights why we're using mindfulness dialogue. For me, it's a fascinating marriage. Another voice. Peggy.
I didn't hear this exact word come out, either in our conversations or in others, but what comes to me through that poem of answering the door to myself and inviting myself in and looking in the mirror is the idea that I've been afraid to meet me. And that is afraid at this moment in life, will I take that step to really, really understand my most authentic self?
Yeah.
And so I got in touch with, you've been afraid of that. And this is the moment in community to bury the fear and share bread with each other, have the wine, have the cake, have the meal, and help each other do that.
That's wonderful, Peggy. I mean, in many traditions, there's the sense that this self, this soul, is like a little deer. It's timid, it hides. You hear it in the Song of Songs and some of the old scriptures, but it's that experience. I've been afraid. It is afraid maybe to show itself. So one voice more.
I was just struck by and thinking something that with all of this, this last two in this first, second, third session, Rilke, it's a Rilke piece that I remember loving, from my 20s, long ago. But I realized here with us and sharing and the different sharers groups, breakout groups, that it's a piece that goes, and I hope I can remember it close enough. Once the realization is accepted that even between the closest of human beings, infinite distances continue to exist, then and only then can walking side by side begin to happen where we are each able to see the other whole against the sky. But this time it was me to see myself whole against the sky. It reminds me of Peg's observation of afraid to see me and some other things. But that Rilke piece always struck me as a relationship with another, but suddenly now and kind of in a tapestry of what we've been talking and discussing, I all of a sudden realized it was to see myself whole against the sky. And it's a little disconcerting. Because I thought I had seen myself already. Anyway, it's
a wonderful place to hold. I think that
yeah.
I thought I knew myself. There's so much more. And I'm getting the feeling too that in our coming together like this, it's like bringing out the best is the way that we say it sometimes. So let's try to weave some of this together. Clearly, I won't be able to, but we've only begun this part of the conversation, and it will continue hopefully in the coming days and weeks of this month. And I want to try to pull it together by sharing a poem by a Welsh poet. I sent it out as part of a foretaste of today by Ruth, a woman called Ruth Bidgood, and it takes a special moment. It's like she offered her own eldering. She was 100 when she died. So, Mickey, you have a long way to go. She was an elder to the end. And the poem is called Roads. And it touches on a theme that came up in a couple of places, that perhaps there's more going on than we appreciate. Maybe we're even guided. We don't know. We use that, and I think we all sense it at different times in our life. So anyway, she's encouraging us not to allow regrets. Now, there's another piece that comes up at this stage of our lives. That don't allow the regrets to get in the way of the love letters, the photographs, and the desperate notes. I experienced that myself. I look back, what if, should I have, could I have? I think it must be something that we experience. But the real encouragement from her is how to appreciate how we've been carried by loving arms much more than we ever realized. This is what she writes. No need to wonder what heron-haunted lake lay in the other valley, or regret the songs in the forest I chose not to traverse. No need to ask where other roads might have led, since they led elsewhere. For nowhere but this here and now is my true destination. The river is gentle in the soft evening, and all the steps of my life have brought me home. Just have a look at it for a moment. No need to wonder what heron-haunted lake lay in the other valley, or regret the songs in the forest I chose not to traverse. No need to ask where other roads might have led, since they led elsewhere. Since they led elsewhere. For nowhere but this here and now is my true destination. The river is gentle in the soft evening of life, obviously, and all the steps of my life have brought me home. So, no regrets. Non, je ne regrette rien. For nowhere but this here and now is my true destination. And then there are the final wonderfully consoling words that speak to this stage of our lives, this soft evening of our lives, this time of integration. Integration. All the steps of my life have brought me home. So let me invite Carlos to say a little bit more about this larger conversation that we're all participating in. Some of us talked about having resources, or maybe a poem or a song, or things that we could contribute. We could make a little archive. But anyway, Carlos.
And before I forget, someone has asked me to ask the group if we can share your emails. There are people who want to communicate with each other, and that would be wonderful.
Can
if
you
we can.
speak up, Carlos?
Yes.
Please.
Sorry. So folks have asked
Just
if we could.
recovering from COVID, by the way. He's a good man.
Folks have asked if we could share emails with each other, and if you can make sure you let me know if it's okay, we would like to do that. One thing I want to say, and I said some of it last time, kind of want to rephrase it today. We were thinking about taking a look at ourselves again and rediscovering ourselves. And I wonder if you can imagine that part of that discovery is ourselves in the we. How are we reflective of ourselves? And Danny and I have been really pursuing this question seriously, and believe that there's a new opportunity in the world that has never been possible before in a serious way with AI. And we want to introduce that part here. Basically, with AI, we can have input from everybody come in detail, and the AI quickly summarizes all the input. And Danny and I have been testing it, and it's pretty remarkable. If for those of you who have not been aware of what's happening, the AI that's been sort of unleashed on the world over the last year is unbelievable in its capacity to take data, to take words, and to succinctly and accurately reflect what's been said. So people have been, kind of scared about what, there's a lot of downside possibly to AI, and that may all be true, but we're exploring the possibility that AI may be part of our future, our destiny, in helping us discover who we are. Never before, I think, have we been able to gather as a large group and have every voice count towards the summary of what's been said. And we are trying to explore if that makes a difference. So we're a group of 38 today. Not huge, but it's a start. And we'd love to really know what difference would it make if every one of you would take just an extra 5 minutes at the end of this while the moment is still fresh, and just write a reflection, a free write reflection. What is the one or two things that really were important to you? An insight, an epiphany, whatever, something that really struck you from today's session, and write it down. It doesn't have to be perfect grammar. It doesn't even have to be all that well thought out. It's just what comes out for the next few minutes, and send it back to us. And we're going to gather it, and we're going to have AI summarize it, and we're going to have you take a look at it. We'll summarize it. We'll publish it on the YouTube channel, and over time we'll figure out if it makes a difference, if it's really reflective of who we are or not. So I would love for you to do that. The more, the better.
What is the email? I'll just write it down as you speak.
The email is contact@anewglobalwe.com. And think about this as discovering who we are as a group, our interbeing. We need each other to learn who we are as a group. So please, take the time and let's explore this incredible opportunity together. See what happens. We don't know what's going to happen, but we'd like to try to find out.
That's wonderful, Carlos. Thank you, everybody. It's for taking your time and sharing your time and giving your time so generously to us, to one another. And I think we're doing something that's really important.
Thank
And
you, Danny.
we'll continue down this road.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
Dan.
you.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks, everyone.
Good night, all.
Good night, all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody. Good night now.
Good night.